30 BC, 3865 AM. Octavian invades Egypt, the largest power base supporting Mark Antony, the kingdom of his lover Cleopatra. Mark Antony commits suicide, the entire Eastern Roman Empire now forfeited to Octavian. Cleopatra is arrested and taken into custody and unsuccessfully attempts to seduce Octavian. She is watched closely by his men, fearing she would commit suicide before allowing herself to be paraded through Rome in a triumph and executed. Cleopatra was not Egyptian, but a woman descended from Macedonians of the Ptolemaic dynasty. She was named after the sister of Alexander of Macedon, but the name Cleopatra is ancient, derived from the Homeric masculine name of the Achaean hero Patroclus. Cleopatra is the reverse. Patroclus died at the hands of the Trojans. The coincidence here lies in that Cleopatra, a woman of Greek origin like Patroclus, dies in the hands of the Romans, descendants of the Trojans. The story circulated was that she allowed venomous snakes to bite her to death, but rumours have persisted that Octavian ordered her death in custody. This year marked the total end of dynastic Egypt. Egypt from this time forward would be under Rome, then the control of Europeans, and then Islam. 28 BC, 3867 AM. Roman historian Marcus Varro died, much of his chronology of the ancient world preserved in the writings of Augustine. Varro's history provided us the unique testimony of the ancients on Phoenix for 1687 BC, mistaking Venus for what was Phoenix. 27 BC, 3868 AM. Gaius Octavius, Octavian, becomes Augustus Caesar, effectively beginning the Roman Empire. Octavian was not, as Julius Caesar, not given to be regarded as a deity nor a king. He resisted Cleopatra, whereas Cleopatra had seduced both Caesar and Mark Antony. Octavian, having total power, instead gave back to the Roman Senate their former freedoms and powers of office, lifted many oppressive measures instituted against the people, and the grateful Senate convened and gave Octavian more power than he could have ever obtained by force, making him Augustus Caesar, the first of the emperors of Rome. An interesting coincidence is found in that Octavian's name means the eighth, and this is indeed the role he fulfilled. For as the 7 kings of the monarchy of Rome exercised total power over Rome, so did Octavian the Eighth, a title very prominent in the prophetic writings that circulated in those days, concerning the last days that took their final form, known as the Apocalypse, or Book of the Revelation of John. The Eighth was a title for the Antichrist, who will exercise total power over the world. As the Western world produces its first emperor, an earthquake in Egypt knocks down one of the 2 great statues of Memnon. This year was 1872 years after the nations were dispersed at the Babel disaster in 1899 BC, and 1380 years after Israel became a nation in 1407 BC. 1. A short history of the world. 25 BC, 3870 AM. After Rome conquered the North African lands, they had been renamed Africa Nova. Juba II, with his new bride, 15-year-old Cleopatra Selene, were married and declared king and queen. She was Cleopatra the Great's daughter, a Macedonian, and he was the last king of an ancient Phoenician lineage. While Cleopatra Selene was famous for her beauty and pedigree, widely admired in Rome, the daughter of Mark Antony, remarkably, Juba II was even more prestigious and popular. He was called Caius Julius Juba and was renowned for his scholarship, a genius who published dozens of books. Among his personal friends were Virgil, Horace, Livy, Agrippa, and the Emperor. Both Ovid and Pliny highly praised Juba. Juba had amassed a great library, and among his literary treasures were sailing instructions to distant lands, like Britain and even the Americas, that had been zealously guarded by his Carthaginian and Phoenician ancestors. Diodorus wrote that during Juba II's reign, they kept this information secret in order to have a place for a refuge if needed. As will be seen, this refuge would be needed, for Rome was always in the habit of turning on her allies. Juba and Selene ruled over the Mauritanians, who were of Eastern origin, having come long ago from Canaan. Some believe that these people of North Africa had come as far back as when Joshua led the Israelites into Canaan. This founding of a kingdom of both Phoenician, Canaanite, and ancient Israelite pedigree was 1344 years after 1369 BC, when Israelites took to the seas and sailed away from Palestine. It was 720 years after the 10 tribes of Israel in 745 BC were deported into Assyria, and this year was 500 years to the fall of Rome in 476 BC. 1. The lost treasure of King Juba. 4. The Greek myths. 24 BC, 3871 AM. Famous researcher and writer Strabo visited Egypt and studied the Great Pyramid, writing that the monument appeared as if it had been let down from heaven itself. In his time, the structure was still encased in gleaming smooth white limestone blocks that would not be removed until 1356 AD, 1380 years into the future. The Great Pyramid was completed in the year 1080 before the flood, or 2815 BC, and this year was 2815 years after the birth of Noah in the first regnal year of the Anunnaki dynasty in 2839 BC. 23 BC, 3872 AM. King Juba II and Queen Cleopatra Selene moved to their seat at Mauritania, present-day Morocco, Algeria, and began building a magnificent kingdom. His scholastic knowledge led him to exploit the land's natural resources, and in a few years the kingdom of Mauritania grew rich and populous, with descendants of Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Hebrews, Jews, Syrians, local North Africans, Greeks, Macedonians, and otherwise Celtiberians from Spain and Romans. Juba II organised one of the largest libraries in antiquity and maintained an incredible treasury. Interestingly, this 23 BC date is isometrically linked to Juba's 23 AD death. 1. The lost treasure of King Juba. 20 BC, 3875 AM. Augustus Caesar visits Mauritania and is so impressed with its growth and majesty that he renames the city Caesarea. King Juba II does not realise the danger he and Cleopatra Selene are in, for Caesarea has caught the eye of Rome, and the ravening wolf has always taken by violence those things that it coveted.